So there is a specific way that you can use triad pairs, triad pairing, to create these kind of intervallic structures, more like arpeggios even. So I want to take a look at that, and I wish I could take credit for coming up with this, but no, I got it from this book, Triad Pairs for Jazz by Gary Cabell. I've talked about this excellent book before, but there's some of my own ideas, my own take on it, and there's this specific chord progression I want to use to create kind of different sounds using this technique. So let's get started, shall we? So again, I've talked about triad pairs, so I'm not gonna explain it in detail again, but just to recap, you take two triads from a scale, they can't share any common notes. That's the rule. Usually you'll find these triads a whole step away from each other, or half step, or a tritone away. So this chord progression I want to take a look at is this chord progression, F major 7 to G flat major 7. And back to F, and then E flat major 7. F, G flat, okay, so some of you are noticing it's the same chords, or the chords from the first 4 bars of the tune Beatrice. Beatrice by Sam Rivers. Even though it's a little bit of a different harmonic rhythm, right? Because that tune goes like quicker. I just like how those chords sounds, and it's a good thing to, when we're practicing this, you could come up with any chord progression, but I like the idea of taking a chord progression from an actual tune. It's a little bit problematic, that tune, because there's no scale that works over all those chords. So you have to kind of change from chord to chord. So triad pairs is an excellent technique that we can use here. So the first thing we need to do is to decide what scale we're going to use. So we're going to use Lydian scales over each and one of these chords. You could pick other scales, but we'll pick Lydian. So if I have a F, maybe F major, just F major 7, I can play F major, G major, F, G, triad, and so on. So all I did there was, this would probably be pattern number 1 if you're looking at triad pairs. So I'm playing an F triad in root position, then go up, play G. Then I play the next inversion of the F, the first inversion of G, second inversion of F, second inversion of G, and then the whole thing starts off over octave higher. So this is great, and you should practice this stuff. And if you haven't practiced this at all, you maybe take a look at some triad pairing exercises. But what I try to do here in this video is look at something for those of you who are kind of bored with that, because it is a little bit pattern sounding, or it's very pattern sounding. Obviously there's tons of patterns, you could reverse it. And so on and so forth. And I mean, I love those patterns. If you play them in the right place, it can sound amazing. I'm thinking of like Pat Metheny, Michael Brecker. They could play those patterns and it sounds great. But I want to take a look at a different way to play them. So instead of going, after I play the first F triad, instead of starting on the G triad from the same inversion, I want to take a look at the last note I'm playing and go down to the closest note I can find from the other triad, which is B, and then play the triad ascending from that note. So instead of this, I get this. So already it's not as repetitive because there's two different shapes, two different inversions. Then I go down from that note and I end up with the same thing an octave higher. Then I go down from that note so that's the idea, and we'll do that from the fifth. Let's start here. So F major and G major triad starting from C. Then I go down and play descending. Same thing, I go up to the, so it's like a mirror. Let's do that again. So now I have kind of a shape that I can play over an F major 7. Okay, and I'm not super concerned with fingerings. I just try to find ways to do it that I like, that works. But you could do it consistent, like the same kind of shape for the 2 octaves if you wanted to, if that makes sense. I just try to find the fingering that works for me. I use slides and a little bit of. There's no system to it. Whatever I find works, I'll do. Okay, so now let's listen to that over an F major 7. Okay, so the next chord is G flat major 7. Here's the trick. Start on the same note. So the 2 triads, if we use the same idea, we can use a G flat and A flat triad over this chord, right? And C is the 3rd of A flat. So I'll do the same thing. I'll play a triad from that note, A flat, and then G flat in root position, A flat. So let's alternate between those 2 chords. I'll loop those 2 chords. So you see, it's the same, you can think of it as this shape, right? That you're just kind of changing colors from chord to chord. So after the G flat, we play an F major 7 again, then E flat major 7. And there we're gonna use F and E flat triad. Down to the closest. That, for some reason, is the trickiest one. So now I'll make a loop with all those 4 chords. then when you feel more comfortable with these triads, you can start to kind of maybe embellish and start to improvise using these triads. So you don't feel like you have to play them like we're doing here, right? This is just an exercise. So why are we doing this? If you watch my videos, you know that I like to ask why. So many reasons. First, I think it's a way to break away from, you know, regular arpeggios and scales, and just finding different ways to combining these notes from the modes. So I often say this, that I want you to think of these Lydian scales not as scales, but as sounds. You can combine these notes in many different ways, arpeggios, pentatonics, and this is just one way to doing it, to create kind of beautiful sounds from these modes, right? But it's also a good technique exercise, and it's good for knowing where the notes are, so when you're moving from one chord to another, you're kind of continuing on the same shape, right? Also ear training. So the first chord, that's the first, right? Now the G flats come up. Can you hear the chord in your head? And then back to do da da do do. So I had a teacher once who was very adamant about that when the next chord is coming up and it's a chord from outside of the key that you're in, the previous chord, you need to be able to kind of imagine that chord. You need to be able to hear it so that the phrase, the lines that you're playing can kind of just go there. And that's another thing you can. It's a little bit stupid if I play just, you know, like that, but you can create lines with these triads once you feel more comfortable with them. Another thing that triad pairs is good for is it can be like it's a soloing, improvising technique, like an improvisational tool, but it can also be for solo guitar if you're playing like by yourself. So instead of playing a chord, you can play this kind of cascading arpeggio. So I don't know if I'm playing, let's say I'm playing body and soul. Right? So I have some tuning issues. So you can hear the chord, but instead of playing the chord, I play some kind of triad pair. So here I'm playing a B flat augmented and E triad. B flat augmented. Or it's actually maybe F sharp, G flat augmented over a B flat alternate. Just to create that sound, right? As a variation or as a technique to throw into your chord melody playing. Okay, so now let's do the same exercise but somewhere else on the fretboard. Let's start with the third. So again, we have F major. So I'll play F, first inversion triad, and I go down to the closest note, play a G triad, and then same thing, octave higher. Go down to the closest note, up to the closest note. Love that one. One of the reasons I picked that chord progression is because you can start on the same note if you start on C. Can't really do that here, so I have to change to A flat for the G flat. So I'm playing A flat major, G flat major. It's also a really cool sound. Then back to F, F and G, and then F and E flat. that sounds like, shall we? This could also be some kind of situation where it's like an F pedal, right? So like G flat over F, and then E flat over F. So if you wanted to, you could change, let's say we go to the G flat. Let's say we go to the G flat. You could change the A flat triad to F minor triad. Same thing except for one note, where it's F instead of E flat. Then you get that major 7, which is nice. But I find it already, like, straight off the bat, it's much harder to do because I'm so used to the major triads are easier to find. I don't know why. It shouldn't be like that. So you could change the triad. There are many triad combinations. The ones we picked before were the most obvious one. Some people suggest that you should try to avoid to have the actual tonic note in the triad pairings. That's a little bit more advanced. But so I could change the A flat triad to the F minor. I could change the other one as well, right? I could change that to B flat minor. So I have all this stuff written out as PDFs with tabs and everything for my Patreons on my Patreon page, for my patrons. Is that how you say it? On my Patreon page. So you can look at this as some kind of etude, right? So I took the same thing, but I changed one of the triads in each example to a minor triad, and it sounds like this. So it's F and E minor. Let's do that again. And then F minor and G flat triads. Back to F and E minor. And then D minor and E flat. So you're wondering, why did I pick those? I could have picked other combinations of minor triads. Well, it was just kind of random. So let's loop that chord progression again. I'm going to play it a little bit slower because this is kind of tricky. Alright, so let's see if I can do this. Play these triads. Bear with me. Okay, so I'm kind of messing it up. I'm gonna play it slow so you get the idea. E minor, F, E minor, F minor, G flat. There it is. That's great. Love that one. So sometimes when you do this, you'll find certain shapes that you really like, and then you should kind of maybe write it down so you remember it, because that's probably gonna show up in your playing. I like that. Maybe you find a different fingering that works better. This works really good. It's good for hybrid picking too. I'm not big on hybrid picking, but sometimes. Could be a idea for a tune. Okay, so that was my exercise. Triad pairs, triad pairing, arpeggios, whatever you want to call it. PDF on my Patreon page, and I got all of this from the book Triad Pairs for Jazz by Gary Gamble. Really, really good book. Let me know in the comments if you have a specific chord progression you think this will work over. And one tune that I can think of is that tune Forest Flower. The chords at the beginning, they're really nice chords, so you could do this over. So, alright, that was it. See you next time.